So I forgot a couple of things, didn't I, Todd? I knew you would remind me. So one of the things I forgot is to welcome all of you. I got so excited with what was going on to welcome you if you've been here a million times or if you've just showed up for the first time today. And Todd has come to help you. If you've just come for the first time today, then we have connection cards are in the back of the chairs. And we have a gift for you. We got one of these awesome coffee mugs that you can take home with you. And it's just really so that we can say thank you for visiting. We know that you gave a lot. And there's books out there, right, Todd? You got what you got next? Yeah, okay. So we're going through the series of You'll Get Through This. There are some books for sale out there. We'll have some more to say about that later. All right? Thanks, buddy. All right. Get out your Sunday papers. We'll walk through this. We've got several things we're doing this morning. Oh, Todd, I forgot. I guess I need my podium up here, don't I? I'm really out of sorts today, buddy. You got to help me out, okay? I'd be lost without you, kid. Thank you. Okay, so what we've been doing the last few weeks is walking through the life of Joseph. We're using material from Max Lucado. You'll get through this. There are little cards in the back with our little mottos that we have on them that talk about we'll get through this. It won't be painless. It won't be quick. But God will use this mess for good, and you're going to hear some specifics about that later. So we learned in the first part that everybody hits a pit moment in their life. Joseph was the kid who wore the coat, the many-colored coat, and he was the favorite of his dad, and it caused envy and strife in his family, so his brothers decided to do away with him, and they threw him in a pit. And that's not unlike some of the spots you end up and I end up in life. Sometimes absolutely nothing to do with what we have. To me, somebody else comes against us. Maybe we make a poor decision, but we end up in these pits. And we had to know that. We had to know that we end up in the pit, but that there's a principle and there's a promise that go with the pit. The promise is, Genesis 50:20, that what they meant for evil, this is at the end of Joseph's story, God used for good. That's the promise. The principle is, Isaiah 43:2, that although these waters come against you and the fire burns against you, you will not be overcome and you will not be burned, but God will deliver you because you are His. So you hit the pit moments, and you got to remember that what God's about is taking that moment in the pit and redeeming it and turning your mess into your message. And what God's about is reminding you that everything could come against you, but He won't allow your life to go the direction that they want it, but He will redeem your life purpose, and He will turn your mess into a message because He's got you, He's protecting you, He's covering you. So then we went to the second week, last week, and we learned that no matter where we are, God is with us. It was incredible that the words that we saw in the scriptures in Genesis, we saw that no matter where Joseph went in this journey, whether he's in the pit, whether he's being sold into slavery, whether he ends up in Potiphar's house, this phrase kept being repeated, God is with you, God is with you. And we asked ourselves a pretty important question last week. What would you do if you were absolutely assured that God was with you? Absolutely assured that God was with you. And it's a real challenge to some of us because we affirm it on Sunday and walk away from it on Monday. And we need to ask ourselves every day, what would I do right now if I was totally assured God was with me? And we called each other out at the end of the service by using Gideon's story and saying, God wants us all to know we're mighty warriors. And I got to tell you, one of my small group members decided to be a mighty warrior. And I called everyone out at the end of the service, and she had a little heart-pumping little episode at the end where she knew God was calling her to be a mighty warrior because the night before, her daughter had informed her that one of her friends was struggling with life so much so that she didn't know if it was worth it anymore. And during the 11 o'clock service or 10 o'clock service last week, this mighty warrior felt God saying, you need to go to that person and bring God to her. And she didn't know what to say or what to do, but by the time we met that night in our small group, that person was able to report, I went to this lady, and she was so overwhelmed that I came to show her that someone cared. That's us. That's us, mighty warriors. What would you do if you knew God was with you? And today, the third part of You'll Get Through This is to understand this principle, and you should just repeat this. It's an easy one for some of us because it is just this. Stupid doesn't fix stupid. Okay, those are words you're not supposed to say to somebody else. I get that. My mom's like, don't call them that. So I didn't, as much as I could try, but you know. This is what it means, everyone. When you get in that pit moment and you don't see the top, you don't see any light, you don't see anything, careful, because stupid doesn't fix stupid. To make another decision, a poor decision, in the midst of a bad spot, now you have two bad moments in your life. Stupid doesn't fix stupid. Genesis chapter 39 is where we are today. So here he is. Here's Joseph. He's gone from the pit into slavery, and he's been bought by Potiphar, is this guy's name, and he is an official. And he's purchased Joseph to run his household. Joseph apparently was a looker, like the guys on the right side of the room. Big, studly guy, apparently. I don't know. I'm just making that part up, okay? I just know that he was attractive enough that, listen to how this scripture unfolds. Verse 1, Joseph had been taken down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the bodyguard, bought him from the Ishmaelites. And the Lord was, here we go again, with Joseph, so he became successful. And so was the house of his master. Now his master saw the Lord was with him, and how the Lord caused all he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found favor in his master's sight and became his personal servant. Now it came at the time that he made him overseer in the house, and all he owned, the Lord blessed his house. Verse 6, so he left everything in Joseph's charge. And then verse 7, and it came about after these events that his master's wife looked with desire at Joseph and said, lie with me. That's where you get the idea that he had to be attractive at some point, because Potiphar's wife moves toward him and says, lie with me. Okay, remember, stupid doesn't fix stupid. So it's a tough moment in his life. Although this sounds really good, the Lord was blessing him, the fact of the matter was he was a slave. He was in a bad spot. And here comes a temptation. So he's in a bad spot, and along comes a temptation. That's never happened to you, right? You've never been in a really bad moment, and the other side didn't whisper, well, why don't you just for a moment, no one will see, you won't get caught, right? Stupid doesn't fix stupid. The first thing we have to do is understand Joseph did his best. That's point number one. Verses 2 through 6. So Joseph was all about following God. Verse 7 tells us, point number 2, that I just put the bait was dangled because all about that fishing thing, right, Nate? Yeah, it's all about fishing. But the bait was dangled by Potiphar's wife. In other words, the opportunity for stupid was there. If this is too plain for you, I'll use a more theological word, but stupid works for me, okay? The opportunity to make a stupid choice in the midst of a stupid or a bad place was right there in the form of this lady. The third thing is, though, in verses 8 through 11, watch the response by Joseph. But he refused. Joseph refused and said to his master's wife, behold, with me here, my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, and he has put all that he owns in my charge. There is no one greater in the house than I, and he has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. Now listen, how then could I do this great evil and sin against God? What would you do if you knew God was absolutely with you? One of the things that you would recognize when temptation comes, it's about your relationship with God. How could I do this, he says, this evil, this sin against God? And it came about as she spoke with Joseph day after day that he did not listen to her to lie. Man, that's a home run right there, right? You're like, I know. I say no to this thing yesterday, and what happens today? It comes back again, and it comes back again. Because this is what happens when stupid approaches us, is it doesn't come one time. It keeps coming back and coming back and coming back. And sometimes we are asked, God asks us, take radical action. You know, quote a scripture verse once, pray a little bit here. Well, it's not working. Then sometimes God literally says, take radical action, and he did to Joseph. Now, when it happened one day, verse 11, he went into the house to do his work. None of the men in the house was there. She caught him by the garment, grabbed a hold of his shirt, lie with me. And listen, and he left his garments in her hand and fled and went outside. Radical action. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen. You cannot take this temptation anymore. Don't get overcome by it. Run away. Well, I was wondering if it was okay if at work, if I went to lunch with this lady at work. You know, it's just lunch. It's just lunch. Well, what does your wife say about that? Well, I haven't talked to her. Stupid doesn't fix stupid. What seems to be an innocent maybe something that's really not, is the beginning of you saying yes to the wrong things at the wrong time. Joseph had to leave his coat behind and run away. Stupid doesn't fix stupid. What would you do if you knew God was always with you? You might just have the courage to get out. You might just have the courage to say to somebody, this is not a good friendship, a good relationship. You might just have the courage to say, it's all on you, God, because I'm leaving that thing behind. So in the world that we live in, which is crazy, I'm a Twitterer. Well, what am I? I'm a tweeter who's on Twitter. And so I am following people that I think are followable. And one time I see this guy, he's into sports, which is a small part of my life. And I follow this, and he's from Mason. I follow this guy, and I read his Twitter handle. And it has these things in it. It has something about God and something about recovery in it. And I think, wow, I'm going to... And as I follow this guy, he starts to impress me with what he writes. In a flyer kind of moment, people, a month ago, in a flyer kind of moment, I feel God say, like, have that guy speak in your church. Like, well, I don't really know him, but I can't get away from it. So I'm going to invite Aaron Emerson to come up right now. I'm unashamed that we're Twitter friends. Okay? Oh. I gotta get us something to sit on there, and it'd be easier to just do a little interview kind of thing. So here's a stool for you, one for me.
All right, thank you.
And I need a microphone for you. I'm not sure which one this is, Wes. Handheld too. I got prepared. I got my little cards here. Seriously, I didn't know what to do here. And I got Aaron's book, and we're going to talk about both of them. So, Aaron, just introduce yourself. Where are you from? How the heck did we get here?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that I've spoken at several schools and church, a couple churches now, and never gets easy speaking in front of crowds. So it might take me a little bit to get warmed up. But I'm Aaron Emerson. I'm 25. From Mason. Grew up in church. My dad's actually a pastor. My girlfriend's right over there, Allison.
Hi, Allison.
My mom's right there, and one of my friends, Lisa, is here to support me too. I'm really thankful for their support. And yeah, I'm the face of addiction. I'm a recovering heroin addict. I've been through quite a lot in the last 8-9 years, but I'm in recovery today, and I'm just loving the life that God's blessing me with.
All right. So that's who you are. Let's go for how do you get to. You grew up in Mason. Grew up in PK.
Yep.
Okay. But I read your book, and I talked to you personally, but there's an event in your life that got you going down this path. Kind of this stupid doesn't fix stupid moment, if I can say that, right?
Yep.
Bad thing happened, and tell us what happened.
Well, there was a combination of things that happened that sort of led me down to hanging out with new friends and trying party scene, alcohol, marijuana, and that was, well, first of all, my cousin died. I was really close with my cousin. He passed away in a really tragic death, and then my dad was fired from his job as pastor at a church in Mason, and it was the only church I ever knew. Grew up right next to the church. It was, I was really proud of my dad for having a church like that, and I loved growing up in the church. Had to move out of our family home that I grew up in, and that was a really hard moment for me. And it was after that I sort of started seeking out new things, started hanging out with new friends, and I decided one day to just, a lot of kids my age were starting to experiment with stuff like alcohol and weed, and I just made a decision to, that stupid doesn't fix stupid decision to, try to smoke marijuana one time. And I did it, and I loved the feeling that it gave me. I loved that it took me away from all the grief that I was experiencing in my life at the time. And it was at that time that my life slowly started to go downhill, and it would take me down quite the journey that would end up with a lot harder drugs than just weed.
Okay, so a couple of factors in here, right? People you started running with, we talked
Yep.
about that. You started to seek out another group of friends. And it wasn't that you weren't successful, like you're really into sports at the time, right?
Yeah, I grew up around sports. I have two older brothers, a younger sister, my dad. We all love sports. It was a big sports family. It was sort of expected that I would play sports my whole life, and I did. I loved them, and I'm not a bragger by any means, but I excelled in sports, in the sports that I played. I played basketball, football, and baseball, and I loved it. And around the time that I started experimenting with drugs and seeking out new friends and people that partied I was going to be on the varsity baseball team as a sophomore and starting center field, but I ended up getting kicked off the team because of my drug use. And it was at that time where my sports career sort of fell off. After that, I was just really embarrassed. At a school like Mason, it's a relatively small school, word travels quickly, and it just got around, and I sort of hid and left the school, and was really embarrassed about everything, and I never really played sports again because of that.
Okay, so it's a small thing. I'm just mentioning it to say that everybody has hopes and dreams, and these are some of Aaron's hopes and dreams. The course that he thought he was on, and then this progression, right? It went from pot. I remember our conversation, right? You got into a couple of pills, right?
Yep.
So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, like I said, the marijuana just, it helped me escape the grief I was going through, and that, like I already said, it's a stupid doesn't fix stupid mistake. Everyone's going to go through grief in their life and experience pain, but I made a decision to use substances to block out my pain, but eventually the weed just stopped doing the trick, and it was around that time at my school, and there was a lot of pills going around, and it was pretty easy to find prescription medications like Vicodin, Adderall, and I started experimenting with those, and I really liked the Vicodin, and then it progressed into Oxycontin, which is a lot stronger than Vicodin, and once I tried Oxycontin, I got addicted after the first few times, and that was a really bad, harsh addiction. That's really when my addiction progressed, and after I was not able to support my habit, I would start stealing and doing all the stuff that drug addicts do to support their habit, and it was a really, really, really rough time, really bad place I was in. I was going through withdrawals in the morning when I woke up and I didn't have it, and it just, it progressed so fast, and it took off on me really fast like a rocket. My addiction, once I got into the oxys, was just bam. And never really got a grip on fixing the addiction for a long time.
So, and I ask you that to understand a couple things. So, what I'm trying to do, and what I thought would help us with Aaron, is some of us, this is going to be new to some of us, and you need to hear some of these things. I needed to hear some things, how progressive. Did you hear him say that? And that didn't do the trick. And then I went farther and farther. And then talk about the first time that you did heroin.
Yeah, I ended up, at the time I was still, I think, in juvenile court, and I went to juvie for something that I did when maybe trying to support my habit. I don't really remember the exact instance, but I got locked up, and when I was locked up was when a lot of my friends or people I was hanging out with and doing pills with started making a switch to heroin, because heroin is the same type of drug as Oxycontin and Vicodin. It's in the same drug class, opiates, and but it's a lot cheaper than Oxycontin, and it's sometimes more potent. So it's only natural for a drug addict in that frame of mind. Once again, it goes back to stupid doesn't fix stupid, and it's only natural for an addict in that state of mind to find something else that's cheaper, that does the trick better. And when I got out, like I said, a lot of people that I was hanging out with were trying heroin because of that fact. And the first time I ever did it, I was in the car with two of my friends, and they sort of convinced me that this was a lot easier to do. It's a lot cheaper. You won't have to steal as much, support your habit with as much money. And but I always told myself in my addiction that I will never ever touch a needle. It's one thing to take pills and smoke weed or something, but I will never stick a needle in my arm. I always told myself that. But when you're in that state of mind, your morals and values just go right out the window. And they were able to convince me to try it because, like I said, seemed like the best alternative at the time. And I can say with confidence that the first time I ever tried heroin that day, I was addicted. I got hooked that very first time. It gave me a feeling that was like nothing else I had ever experienced, and just a really warm sensation that it did the trick better than anything I had ever tried. And the next morning, I woke up and I already needed it right away. After only doing it one time, that next morning I was already thinking about how am I going to get this drug again? Where am I going to get it? How am I going to get the money to do it? And I got hooked just doing it one time.
So I saw a couple of my other friends here today who have gone through this same journey, and you use the same book. By the way, this is Aaron's book, and it's available back at. I'll just say to you, this is his diary, his journal. If you're looking for a feel-good story, this isn't it. This is just the raw, what it was like to be an addict. A lot of this stuff just, whoa, to me when I read it. But I love the fact that this is raw stuff. If you don't think this stuff is what it is, you need an education. And I mean myself too. When you read this, you'll get his state of mind, and you'll hear a lot worse stuff than he's saying this morning about the journey down the hill, if you will, into drug addiction. But you use the word monster in the book. And that's what I had heard from my friends, that once you get to that state, this monster basically is everything about what you do. You steal for it, right? You betray your close friends, right?
Yeah, I betrayed everyone around me. I started stealing every day. I could not hold down any type of job for more than a week or two. My family stopped giving me money, obviously, and even people that I was using with didn't want to be around me because all I used to do was, steal and try to support my habit. I was not someone that you wanted to be around. I was just a miserable person that all my life was revolved around was heroin and seeking out money to get heroin. And, it's kind of hard to talk about it sometimes, to look back at that state of life I was in at that time, to see how I was living and the kind of person I was, because I know that was not really me. That was not the real me. But I was a monster. I sort of was. I would steal from my family and steal from anyone around me that I could get money or items to pawn. And it was just miserable life I was living. And like you said, it's just a monstrous state. The drug is a monster. You become a monster when you're in that state of mind. And I felt like there was no way out. I was just so hopeless and miserable. And I really felt that there was never going to be a time that I could live sober. It was that bad.
This is tough to hear because there's not a whole lot of light going on in this guy's life at this time. If you read this journey that he's on, it's pretty dark. It's pretty difficult. And some of the things that are I'll just gloss over the things I read, right? Some of the things in his life, robbed at gunpoint, he flipped the car over several times, got in a fight in jail, spent time in the hole, spent his birthdays in jail, and it's a repetitive theme in his book about the heartbreak of family, how when he was in that place, there would be birthdays, mom, dad, brother, birthdays, and it always caused him to fall farther into that pit. And you could see, and this is not a guy, I hope you heard his intro, this is not a guy that grew up in a bad place. Brenda's here, amazingly supportive parents, supportive siblings. This is not that story that you think. This is a story about a guy who hit a life place and made a choice, and how dangerous that choice is. Because I'm reading this book thinking, this is all of us, people. And that's why we needed Aaron to come today to remind us that these are not those people. This is us. This is us at one choice that leads to another choice. There are things in the book where he just talks about his family, and like the birthdays is brutal. I mean, he just talks about and he uses words about himself like, wow. But it just was that moment of thinking, I'm such a waste of life. And he says that in the book several times. Now, this is a statement you made. I just want you to comment on this. We could be here all day. So I'm moving ahead here because I love this conversation. But this is Aaron's words, right? He wrote in his journal, I'm high and I'm drunk now. It's really got me thinking. When I'm like this, I feel so complete, feel so content with my life. I'm so confident in my actions and proud of myself. Why can't I feel like this when I'm not high? Why do I need the drugs to feel this way? Wow, what was that like?
Yeah, that's why when you're in that state of mind, that's why it's so hard to get sober is because you know that the only way you can really function and feel normal is when you're high or when you're drunk or when you have that substance that you're addicted to flowing through your body. Because when you're not high, you just feel so out of it. You can't really function. You feel like you have those thoughts like you're a waste of life and like you're just some huge loser. And there was a time when I really thought that maybe it was just God's plan for me to show other people what not to do. And I really thought that my life was going to end in an overdose death or in prison because I just could not live. I could not live sober. I hated myself when I was sober. And like I said, it's hard for me to talk about this sometimes, but I really do feel like it's important to tell my story to show what God can do when you put trust in Him and when that last resort to turn to God. But yeah, I could not function when I was not sober, but when I did have the substances flowing through my body, I would feel complete. I could feel like I could talk to other people and hold down a conversation, look people in the eye, and it's sad that I had to have that to really function like that, but that's just how it is when you're an addict or when you're a really bad alcoholic like that.
Okay, so let's turn the corner now. So what you need to understand at my interview with Aaron earlier, right? I think you told me 8 years old. When did you give your heart to Jesus the very first time?
Yeah, I don't remember the exact age. I think I was
You were
maybe
young, though, right?
7 or 8 when I first did
so
that.
common journey for some of us, right? We're brought up in the confines of Christian faith. We give our heart early to God. So this journey Aaron's on, he's not on alone. Thank you. Okay, so he's not on this journey alone. He feels alone. You read in his journal, la la la. But this is what he starts writing, and I can read this in his journal, and I can see. So in early on, right in your journal, 2011, I know God has a plan for me. A month later, Jesus rose from the grave to save people like me. 2 months later, pray, please God heal me. In December of 2011, please God use this experience for good. 2012. God has a plan for everybody's life if they just submit to Him and seek out His will. 2012 later, there is something bigger in store for me. 2012, Jesus died for me. I feel like someday I'm going to do something with my life in April of 2012. In the first couple years of this, and this is a roller coaster journey, people, and I have just touched on it. Read the book. This is in jail, out of jail. This is stealing. This is felony. This is a story. But all through this story is what we talked about last week. God was with Aaron. God was with Aaron. So now we get to the turning point kind of stuff, okay? So God's with you. You've lost a friend to overdose, right? There's a spot where Eric, one of your friends, overdosed. He passes away. He's gone through all kinds of stuff. And tell him about how this thing starts going up the hill instead of down the hill.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that sort of combined to help me finally get motivated to seek out God and to seek out help. I know one of the bigger instances that happened was, my dad told me that once I got out of jail one time that if I used drugs anymore in his house or if I stole from my family one more time, he was going to have to kick me out. And I did. I was in. I don't remember if it was me using or if I stole. I think it was I stole from my family again. And he lived up to his word. He kicked me out, but I didn't have anywhere to go. No one wanted to be around me.
Tell him how that worked, though. He didn't just kick you out. What did he do?
Yeah, he had to drop me off at the homeless shelter in Lansing.
Whoa. Feel this moment, people. This is a dad who's sold out for God. Takes his son to a homeless shelter. Because there's another side of this story, Brenda. There's another side of this story. This is a mom and dad and a family story, too. And to some of you in the room today, you know exactly what we're talking about right now because you worry about the next phone call. You are worried about that next decision that one of your kids makes. And this is a whole story. This is about Aaron's recovery, but it's also about parents. It's also about the whole of what happens when someone becomes an addict. And I just wanted you to hear that moment of how tough that was on his family. That his dad literally said, one more mess up and you're in. And can you imagine driving away from a homeless shelter, leaving your kid there? I can't. But this is the start of something that happens. So keep going, Aaron.
Yeah, so he dropped me off at the homeless shelter, and that was something that finally did it for me. I had been to several rehabs. I had been to jail many times, and none of it did the trick. But seeing that look on my dad's face when he dropped me off at the homeless shelter was something that finally got it to click, that I had to do something different. That if I didn't do this, I was going to be living on the streets for the rest of my life, and I wasn't going to have a relationship with the family that I love and the family that supported me so much, a really close-knit family. And I realized then that this was it. I had to make a decision right now if I wanted to live or die. And once I got into the homeless shelter, the next day I made a call to try to get into a detox facility to try to get clean. And I went down to a place in Jackson. They have a detox down there called Allegiance Recovery Center. I went to Allegiance, and for the first time in my life at that time, in those prior 6-7 years, I was finally in the mode of wanting to get clean and being serious about recovery. And that's in that place I really did a lot for myself. And it wasn't a long stay. It was about 10 days, but in there they hooked me up with a case manager, and a lady from a company in town called Wellness INX. Her name's Deb. She was a case manager that really put a lot of faith in me and really put a lot of care into me and wanted to get me better. And she helped me a lot. And she then hooked me up with a recovery coach. His name's Phil Pavona. He's from around this area, sort of. And Phil, he did a lot for me. Phil really helped me out. And he made a plan. He made a recovery plan. At first, I would meet with him, and he would make a plan for one day at a time. He'd lay out the groundwork for each day. He'd say, all right, this is what you're going to do today. You're going to go to a meeting. You're going to go to counseling later. And you're going to come back home. And you're going to go to another meeting later tonight. He literally laid out each day, those first couple weeks, hour by hour. And then after a while, those first couple weeks, he would lay it out by the week. And after more time went by, it would be by the month, and then 3 months at a time, 3 months, 6 months. And during that time, I just kept getting stronger and stronger. And after each day, I would feel a little bit more proud of myself and gain a little bit more strength. And I think it was 3 or 4 months after staying sober when I could finally look myself in the mirror and look myself in the eyes and say, I'm proud of you. I'm finally proud of you for doing something. And even though I don't have a job, even though I'm not going to school, I don't have any money, I'm finally doing something to better my life. And it was a big turning point for me. And like I said, it has finally started to gain strength and get some sobriety under my belt. And from there, my recovery just sort of took off.
So there's some things that I heard and hear in the story, right? People, the importance of people who believed in you, right? Recovery coach, right? Group meetings, right? You went to group meetings, right? NA, AA, yep, okay. So, and I've heard this before, the value of people, right? We talk about it in the church all the time. Oh, you need a small group. Listen, this is why you need a small group. Groups are, in AA they say this, I get drunk, we get sober. Let's let that settle in for a moment. I get drunk, we get sober. It's the power of the right people in your life. People going through. And I talked to Aaron, that's like I said ahead of time, and he repeated that to me. Like, no, those people, and when you don't, you relapse, right? When you think you're strong enough on your own as an addict, it's a backward step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had to experience that. Since that time, since that first recovery, I have relapsed a couple times, and both times it was because I would stay clean for about a year, and I would stop going to my meetings. I would stop going to my NA and AA meetings as much. I would stop talking to my recovery coach Phil as much. And every time I stopped doing that, I would get a little weaker. And eventually it would lead down to relapsing and picking back up drugs. But I'm happy to say now that I'm sober again, and I think I'm actually, in a way, a little bit looking at those relapses as sort of helping me, because I know now that I can never let up on my recovery. No matter how long it's been, no matter what I do, I cannot let up on my recovery. I cannot stop going to my meetings. I cannot stop going to those people like Phil in the small groups. If I do, I'm just going to get weaker, and eventually it always leads back to the same thing.
Okay, so this is some of then what's happened. So this journey, this 3 steps forward, 2 steps back journey, tough journey he's on into recovery. But since that's happened, Aaron has had the chance to speak to the House of Representatives, right? Mm-hmm. Because when they were talking about the drug Narcan, I don't know if any of you know about this, but all first responders now carry it, right? It is a drug to be given immediately to counteract the effects of heroin, right? Mm-hmm. I have firefighter friends who've told me all about this and that they use this. He's had a lead article in the Lansing State Journal. Channel 10 interviewed you, right? Yep. Went to LCC. Your job's going to be what? You're going to be newspaper editor?
Yeah, I'm the editor at the Lookout. It's the Lansing Community College student newspaper.
The fan group, you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, Families Against Narcotics. That's Phil Pavona, my recovery coach I just told you about. He's I think the executive director of FAN. I forget the exact title he has, but he really did everything for getting FAN started in Alchemist. It's a organization that really helps out families and addicts. They meet once a month in East Lansing at University Lutheran Church, and they do a lot with helping out family members and addicts and supporting people who have lost loved ones to drugs. And they also do a lot of advocacy work, like going in front of the representatives to help pass bills, and they do a lot for the recovery community in the area.
And I think, Lisa, that's the information that we have, right? So out on the welcome table, we have some information. You want to pick it up about the FAN organization, some cards and some brochures. You've spoken at youth groups, schools, and here's one of the moments that happened in his life that I saved it to the end, because this is a very difficult moment, and now it's turned into a tremendous blessing. But while in addiction, Aaron found out he's going to be a father. Talk about that.
Yeah, I have a 5-year-old daughter named Melody, and it was something that happened during my addiction when I was sort of living wild, and it was very unexpected at the time, but it has turned out to be a huge blessing in my life, because Melody is just an amazing girl, and she has helped me out in my recovery a lot. She's really motivated me a lot to make the right decisions, and it was around that time and around the time of getting with my girlfriend Allison. Together, those 2 ladies have really done a lot for my recovery and motivated me so much to stay on the right path. Especially my mom, too. My parents have they've always been there for me, but my parents have really been huge in my recovery, and people like Lisa and Fan. Well, without all them, I would definitely not be in recovery today.
There's just so much about this story. I'm not going to, but I would encourage you, some of you who are traveling this path, read the book. And just warning, it's just a diary. It's just a journal. It's just him. And he's working on a second one, right?
Yeah, I want to eventually write a book. It's going to be a while. It'll probably at least be a couple years until I finish working on it and publish it. But this book is mainly about my addiction and that first year of trying to find recovery. But I'd like to also write a book about living life in long-term recovery, and talk about my relapses, and talk about what it's like to live as a recovering addict full-time in your life. Like I said, you can never let up on your recovery when you're a recovering addict, and I'd like to really publish a book about what it's like living as a recovering addict full-time like that.
So we talked about this, right? So neither of us are theology experts, but at some point in his recovery, Aaron said, you know what, I know I did this as a child and said, God, I'm all yours. But at some point, I think in your bedroom, right? He said, I just kneeled down and said again to God, I want to be yours. I want to have that relationship. Aaron, what have I left out? What's your parting words? What else would you like to say to everybody here today?
Just that there's always hope, no matter what situation you're in life, no matter how far deep you think you may be, in any situation, not just addiction or alcoholism, but in any situation in life, there's always hope. And I always say that if you're alive, hope is alive, because no matter how far gone someone may think they are, how far gone you may think somebody else is, there's always hope and there's always room for change. I just always like to talk about that if you were alive, hope is alive.
Okay, so I think, see in the slide up on the board. So here's some ways to follow Aaron's journey. Here's some of the things that are happening in his life. You can follow Aaron Emerson 09. That's what I do. Okay, and he talks about the Tigers pitching and everything else. He's on Twitter. He's just doing his stuff. Also on Facebook.com, Hope from Dope. That's your blog, right? Newsletter.
Yep.
Yeah, and people can read that. It's really, really good stuff. It's stuff that he's putting out there about what God's doing, about his journey. But hey, will you thank Aaron for being here today, everybody? Thanks. Thanks, man. You can go ahead and sit down. That's all right. Oh man, thanks everybody. God is real, and so are the traps that the other side puts out there. And we came together today as a group of people to affirm that there's power in the name of Jesus. This is the last quote from Aaron's book, and this is outstanding. This is where we've tried to live as a church and where Aaron lives. But this is what he says later on in his book. How much grace does our God have that somebody like me could be used as an instrument? A lot is the answer. Thanks, Aaron. You are an instrument of God. You brought his mercy and grace in a real life form. And I will be dead serious with you at this moment. Pray for this guy. He has got a giant target on his back. The other side does not want that message to get out. You do know, right, with Lisa here and other people here, you do know that Aaron is a minority of minorities of minorities. People do not make it out of these holes, out of these traps, out of these addictions, aside from the power of God's deliverance. And a word to those of you who aren't Aaron. I've learned this in the last 2 years of my own personal life. I grew up like a lot of people in the church who thought addictions were bad decisions and lived my life without intention, but lived my life in an attitude of and toward those people that said, when you make a better choice, come back and see me. In the last couple years, I had to get my heart broken enough to understand that I was not willing to walk with people like this the way they were. I was not willing to enter their life enough to ask why. Why do you make those choices? What's happened to you? I just thought, make a better choice. Make a better choice. Make a better choice. In the last couple of years, my heart is totally reversed to the fact that I now can understand when Jesus said, you need to walk with people. And walking with the addicts and the alcoholics and the people that are in any form of addiction or trap or hole is a monumental undertaking that the church must embrace with grace, mercy, and love. We cannot afford anymore to be those people who say, when you get and when you do, we'll love you. We have to love them now, like they are right now, and because we are they. Do you understand that? There's not a person in the room who didn't grow up in chains. And a lot of you are just one decision from a slide that Aaron was on. And God has stopped your heart this morning as you've heard Aaron's story going, whoa, whoa, because nobody knows the slide you're on, and you've kept it buried or secret. And God is exposed in the way God exposes today, which is love, kindness, and hope. And so the end of the story today is the song that we started with, Chain Breaker. It's kind of a raucous rock and roll song, but what it's about is if you need saving and if you need freedom, he is a prison-shaking Savior. Twice in the book of Acts, once to Peter and once to Paul and Silas, God literally came down and broke chains in people's lives. And immediately following, especially in Paul and Silas, God brought people to himself. This is what I've got for you, because I know this is a really prevalent thing. We don't talk about it enough. But what I have for you today are chain links. Broken chain links. This is for you if that person's not here today. This is for some of you as family members who need a chain link that you're going to put somewhere to remind you that God has the power to break a chain in someone's life that you love. Because there's someone in your life and in your set of circumstances, workplace, school, whatever, and they are an addict. They are hopelessly bound in chains. Some of you will come to pick one of these up as a prayer reminder. I think courageously, I think some of you will come to make the step that Aaron made. And you got to spend time with Aaron. Sorry, I spent time with him. This was not, how do I say this? This was not, I'm over it, done. This is a grueling recovery. This is a struggle recovery. But some of you need to say yes for the first time today to the recovery process and pick up a chain link. The rest of us, I'm going to ask you to check your heart. How do you treat people? Do you see them as just bad decision makers? Oh, those people? Do you turn the other way to really getting to know them because you know it'll be messy and it'll cost you? This could be the most significant thing in some people's lives because you journey where Jesus did. He hung out with people like Aaron. The scriptures are filled with the addicts, and they call them sinners and tax collectors, and Jesus got in all kinds of trouble for running with those people, but he had to get his heart in there, and your heart will break when you really get in there. Chain breaker. If you feel lost, he's a way maker. If you need freedom and saving, he's a prison-shaking Savior. We'll sing the song as a commitment song at the end. It's not that kind. It's not slow and blah, blah, blah. But it is, for me, it's a commitment moment. And I'll ask some of you, make a commitment by coming forward today. Come forward and get a chain link. I got a couple students who are going to cut some chain so you can hear the chain breaking happening. You can get a little bit of a feel for the effort it takes. And again, we're not talking about people. We're talking about God breaking chains and people walking alongside of people to say, I support you in this process. And this is a process that and a problem that's so close to us that we don't even know it. So close to us. Let's make a stand as a church today and as a group of people that we support the chain-breaking God. Okay, stand at the end here.
You've been walking the same old road for miles and miles. If you've been hearing the same old voice tell the same old lies, if you're trying to fill the same old holes inside, there's a better life. There's a better life. If you've got pain, he's a pain taker. You feel lost, he's a way maker. You need freedom, saving, he's a prison shaking savior. If you got chains, he's a chain breaker. We've all searched for the light of day in the dead of night. We've all found ourselves worn out from the same old fight. You can feel it. Somebody testify. You believe it. You receive it.
Oh Lord,
You can feel it. Somebody testify, testify. You believe it. You receive it.
Lord,
You can feel it. Somebody testify. You got pain. He's a pain taker. You feel lost. He's a way maker.
He's a way maker.
You need freedom. Save him. He's a prison shaking savior. You got chains.
Chain breaker.
You need freedom. Save him. He's a prison shaking savior. You got chains. He's a chain breaker.
Let's go back to the second verse.
We've all searched for the light of day in the dead of night.
We've all found ourselves worn out from the same old fight. We've all run to things we know just ain't right. There's a better life. There's a better life. You got pain. He's a pain taker. You feel lost. He's a way maker. You need freedom. Save him. He's a prison shaking savior. You got chains. He's a chain breaker. You believe it. You receive it. You can feel it. Somebody testify. You believe it. You receive it. You can feel it. Somebody testify. You believe it. You receive it. You can feel it. Somebody testify. You got pain. He's a pain taker. You feel lost. He's a way maker. You need freedom. Save him. He's a prison shaking savior. You got chains. He's a chain breaker. You need freedom. Save him. He's a prison shaking savior. You got chains. He's a chain breaker.
Okay, just a reminder, it's a mark in the sand, it's a beginning moment, it's not the end of the fight. Okay? So we're going to pray and we're going to support people who have come and people who have come and got changed today, but it's a get into the fight moment, not the fight is over. Obviously, God has the power to win the battle and break the chains, but we are called to be the people who get in the fight with people. Be unashamed this week when you see somebody and it gets to that moment where they're outing themselves and saying, can you go, I know a chain-breaking God, and I will be a support of you as God works to break your chains. Okay, a couple things at the end of what we're going to do is Aaron's going to be here. I'm sorry, Aaron, but they're going to want to talk to you. All right? And Aaron has books. They're $10 a piece that are out there on the table. And Pastor is going to be with Eric, and they're going to go down into Tom Davis's Sunday school room. They have food down there, which is an attraction, okay? They have food down there, but they're going to talk about what God's doing to break chains in another part of the world. It's the same God. It's the same people who are in chains. God, thank you this morning for visiting with us, for being really present in this place. You have broken the chains. You broke the chain of death with your resurrection, but people in this world are bound in chains, and you want to break chains. Use us, God, as instruments of your grace. We pray in Christ's name. Amen.